Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. We're going to be talking about the 72nd scale C5 from Anigrand. It's a quick kind of slide deck review of how the build went. And if you're thinking about buying it, I'll bottom line up front, don't. Um, Not worth it to me for the effort that has to go into it. All the inaccuracies that it has and decals aren't good. There's a lot. If you don't believe me, stick through it. Or if you absolutely have to have one of these for whatever reason, um, this is a little bit of what you can expect with the kit. So here we go. So straight out of the gate, you can see these parts are really, really big, um, but you can see how much warping has kind of happened in between the manufacturing and the shipping process. For the most part, the stuff didn't arrive really broken, as you can see on the nose, kind of under where the canopy glass would go. That part is broken off, but I've got it, and it did glue in pretty well. But you can see kind of towards the tail end, just how that warpage has shifted, probably 4 or 5 millimeters for that tail to have to be fixed. Um, and also, I wanted to highlight this will kind of come into play later, but if you look in where that wing joint is, I don't know if you can see my mouse right here. Right in the center, kind of like towards the aft, you can see the thickness of the resin and how it varies. Like on aircraft left side, it's probably real number about a 1/4 inch thick of resin, and on the other side, it is really just like a few millimeters. Um, and that comes into effect later with the wing joint. I'll hit on it later. I don't want to make this a 45-minute video of me complaining. Here you can see it again. Here's that massive step uh, in that seam. It just makes it difficult to glue, difficult to sand, and difficult to kind of get a good join on. And then that step towards the tail as well. As you can imagine, gluing this stuff together was a little bit of a process. The fuselage came in a forward, and an aft, and a left and a right. So that whole thing that you're looking at right here is 4 pieces. Um, So I used super glue on the seams that you can see kind of along the top, and I just did it like an inch at a time. And as you can see, I really caked it in there because I know there's going to be a lot of weight, especially once you put the wings on. There's going to be a lot trying to pull this thing apart. So the last thing I wanted was final assembly after everything's been painted, and then we get a crack down the top. So I really overloaded it with glue on the outside to get the seams lined up as I could possibly get it. And then you can see I got the epoxy, and that aluminum angle right there is just reinforcement that I put along the inside. Those I put on the left and the right side to kind of support under where the wings would go, to make sure that those didn't buckle out or anything. And also take note on this one, the wing joint, those 4 pins are what align the wing up, and the resin casting on them is just, there were just blocks around 2 of them. You can kind of see, because I hadn't cleaned this one up yet, the one on the back side on aircraft left, it still has like a good chunk on it. And for alignment pegs, there's no good way of sanding around a round peg like that. So just more work for the sake of work on this one. Kind of poorly designed, poorly set up as far as the casting goes. You can see here the tail and the nose door, whatever that thing is. Um, those are kind of just dry fitted in place just to see how everything goes. And then the little spawns and things where the wheels go up, those have been glued in. Those help a lot for reinforcement, obviously. They fit relatively well once you get them all sanded down. Once again, the resin plugs are kind of in weird spots for that. So you got to work it a little bit. And you can see my super glue oozing out kind of in the joint of where those 3 pieces meet. That was well needed, and it was definitely sanded down on the backside. Uh, General shape of the C5 is definitely there. It does start to look a little bit impressive. I will say the seam lines, even though they're a little bit big for the scale, obviously 72 is really, really small. Um, it does look pretty sharp at that point. So there's a plus side for them. As far as the seam lines were going, I was definitely focusing along the top, putting most of my attention there. into what you'd mainly be able to see. Now, the downside of that is at some point you have to figure out what's left. And once everything was glued, this is what we've got in the bottom. So obviously, massive gap, not a huge deal, but it is something we're gonna have to be dealing with. Kind of while we got this shot, wheel wells, huge wheel wells. The wheels are a big part of a C5 because there's what 28 wheels on there. Um, that just I don't know, little waffle detail, whatever it is. I guess it's something. Check the box, whatever. I feel like they could have done some more there, but that's fine. All right, next is the window. As you can see, this is horrendous. I don't know. There's a few times kind of like throughout this build that I'm wondering like what they as the company manufacturing this were really going for. Um, on zero side of this window does it fit. It is not the correct width. It is too wide for the aircraft. It is too short and too shallow, if you will. So nothing anywhere near was close to fitting. Another shot for you there. You can kind of see what I mean by it being too shallow. It doesn't fit the contour of the line that it would be. Um, and it's probably about a quarter inch, maybe a little bit more, too short for the hole that was left for it in the resin mold. And you can't really tell, but the edges you can kind of see by the shadow on the bottom part of that image. Um, the outsides of the canopy are a good few millimeters on either side too wide for the resin casting. So the way I started to handle this, I just got plastic card and just kind of started building it out. Um, Trying to fill the gaps. If nothing else, there wouldn't be a massive hole that you'd be able to look down through the canopy. The window's going to be painted black, so that'd probably help hide some of all this. Also, side note, I knew the canopy was going to be painted black, but no, interior detail's a joke. There's a floor on it. If you wanted to do, the nose or the tail section open, there's a floor. There's nothing on the sides. There's no cockpit detail. There's like a couple seats and a dashboard, if I remember right. It's just there's really nothing there. But even if there was, the canopy's so thick that you can't really see through it. I didn't get a picture before I painted it, but I did get a good picture of showing you how thick it is on the next one. And this is how you can see how thick it is. Really, I'm sure there's a lot that goes into resin casting. Maybe it's difficult to get thin, clear parts. I don't know. It was a lot. That was one of the reasons painting it black and just having it kind of closed off was the right idea. But I also, in order to make the sides fit, rather than shaving down the canopy, the clear resin, I would thin down the top and kind of bend the sides in together, and then just glue one side, cross my fingers, and then push the other side in, bend it, glue it, hope it stayed. This was attempt one. Obviously, we are still very, very far from where we need to be, but it is in. There are no massive holes, and it's at least giving a very secure something to start with. Um, and once again, I went on the inside and just caked this thing in epoxy so that as I continue to shape and sand and fill and sand and fill and sand, uh, there would be some kind of support there, and I wouldn't end up cracking the glue and all that. So this is where we started. This is how it looked a little bit later. This wasn't by any means the last iteration of sanding, but this is kind of how it was going. Was I was spraying different colors just so that as I would sand, I would kind of see which layer I was getting into and how far I needed to go, and where I needed to focus my attention. I ended up sanding down a good amount of the clear resin anyways. I had the mask on it earlier. I ended up taking those masks off and realizing that I was just going to paint the outside black rather than the inside because of how much I had to sand away as I was working on this frame. Getting a little bit closer here, just kind of another progress shot along the way. Obviously, I decided to glue the nose on at this point as that contour kind of in that fuselage joint line in front of the canopy was going to start becoming an issue. I didn't want to sand too deep into that and then build myself a step where the nose joint. So I glued that in. Didn't really focus on filling the seams or any of that just yet. I just wanted it there so that I had the shape, so that I wasn't kind of misshaping the entire front end with most of it missing. Another shot of the other side, you can start to see as those seam lines are being cleared out, it's starting to smooth out a little bit. And here you can see the final iteration once everything got primed. I did go back in and rescribe that line around the nose. As you can see, I sanded through most of that. Um, but as far as the canopy was concerned, the glass was in, it was smooth, I was happy. Based on the scale and the fit of the door, I decided to mostly cover that joint in the 72nd scale. That that seam line would pretty much not be there anyways. So I decided to mostly get rid of that. You can't see it in the light anyways. It's there, it's faint, but I wanted it mostly gone. Here's another problem I ran into that I didn't really expect as I was doing this was I was sanding the glue down from those joints along the top. As thick as that resin is, as I was sanding through that top layer, I was starting to run into issues where there were air bubbles within the cast. So I would sand, find a bubble, have to fill it, sand it again. As I'm sanding it, I find another one, and you just have to keep going. And because those steps in the resin were so big where those joints were, you're sanding down a good amount. So obviously your seam lines end up disappearing. You can still see the seam lines here, so I'm not even that deep, and I'm still filling in air bubbles. Um, but that was a process, and this real number, probably 2 or 3 weeks of just sanding, priming every day after work, just while I'm sitting on the couch watching South Park, just kind of going to town on this thing. If I put all of my attention on it, I would go insane. So I had to do it while I was doing other stuff. It took a very long time. Easily the biggest struggle and what took the most amount of time for this was cleaning these seams up and getting it presentable. As you can see, the bottom's made a lot more progress. We filled in that big hole in the middle and then just started working around the sponsons or whatever wheel thing. Um, Kind of sanding that down. It's looking a lot smoother, which is nice. This was a little bit easier to clean up than the top, mainly because the massive hole that I had to fill, I made. So I was able to work with that a lot easier, sanding down plastic card and super glue rather than sanding down resin that had a bunch of bubbles in it. Starting to work the wing next. The wing is a left wing, a right wing, kind of with that back spine piece that kind of caps that joint, and has some of those locating pins that kind of click through. Um, I say click very loosely. Don't expect a awesome joint on this one. Um, you've got a big seam to fill there as well. And kind of with that, there wasn't a lot of strength in there. Um, and just resin's heavy in and of itself. So I knew there was going to be a problem there. I thought to MacGyver kind of some strength in here, and what this is, if I remember right, is the inner detail to the loading ramp. Like I said, there's resin floors provided, and not really much else. So I just snapped off a piece of that, uh, pumped it full of two-part epoxy. Um, I glued it in place. Fast forward, it did work pretty well. Stayed pretty strong. So uh, if you decide to make one, I would highly recommend doing this. Even once they were glued before I put this in, there was still a lot of flex even with the glue in place. So it was an accident waiting to happen. Here you can see everything just kind of backed out. This was before I put that reinforcement in, but you can see just kind of the size of it. None of it ever fit on my workbench. That's why it's on my kitchen table. It's on my coffee table. It's on the floor of my little man cave, which is fine. But yeah, get ready for that too. Next was dry fitting. I kind of needed this as a little reward to myself, a go me C-5 thing. After the amount of work that it went in now, I finally just kind of threw the wings on um, and dropped the tail in place, and it started to look like an airplane. Rewarding, still a long way to go. It's massive. but it was starting to look relatively good. Not surprising, we had more fit issues. Here, at least this one was a consistent gap that I could fill with plastic card glue and go from there. Uh, you can kind of see on the fuselage half where it meets the wing, there's a big old crack, and that's because this was that thin side that I showed you towards the beginning of the video. Aircraft left was really, really thick. Aircraft right was really, really thin. And that cracked just in putting the wing there, kind of shifting it around, um, coming into contact with more resin that was a relatively tight fit. It cracked it. So, downside. This was the first parts of getting that wing secured. I push it as far forward as I could so that there was a relatively small gap there. Left the bigger gap towards the back. And what I did here, fill it with that plastic card like I told you about. I just kind of put it in the spot, traced it with a line, cut it out, popped it in, and then once again just filled it with super glue. And with that, there was a vertical step as well. So just layer after layer of thin Tamiya putty, so that it would dry without shrinking. And this was before sanding, and if I remember right, this was before even the last layer of it. I'm sure there's a ton more. Uh, just kind of feathered it out and just kind of did the best that I could, especially with that spine shape in there with a relatively sharp corner in there. So I just kind of feathered it out, realizing I was gonna have to re-sand that and reshape it so that it was at least uh, convincing. Convincing probably wasn't the right word in there, but you get what I'm talking about. And this is once I started to sand it away. It went the same way that I was talking about earlier, where you would sand. I would paint it with some kind of primer, sand it again, find where my holes were, fill it again, sand it. If there was anything that needed more support, I would fill it with super glue rather than putty, sand it, and go from there. This was a little progress shot once I got the hole filled up. Obviously, I didn't cut in just yet on that hard part where that spine is, and I didn't fill the wing where the actual wing meets that cap, but it was just that kind of forward back gap that got filled. So very happy with the way that went. Once again, just took a ton of work. And the benefit of that, if you want to look at an upside, is every time you fill it with more super glue, you're strengthening it. So it did make it stronger, which really, really nice based on the weight of this. Starting to work the landing gear next. Another big problem that I had with this one, these were cast different. I think they're ABS plastic. I'm not really sure. Um, the instructions for this just abysmal. Over the entire thing, the whole project, the instruction sheet is a front and back of an 8.5 by 11 black and white piece of paper. Um, the effort was just non-existent into making any of this clear. There was a pile of leftover parts that I didn't know where they went and didn't end up using. I think they were like joints for the doors and stuff. They were closed anyway, so not a huge deal. Um, I feel like when I'm spending almost $400 for this kit, that shouldn't be a factor in my brain of trying to figure out how this stuff goes. If they are going to charge that much for this, I think there should be a little bit of effort there. Um, Complaint number two about landing gear. In the instructions, it shows the supports, the main supports, are metal. So those three vertical sticks on each leg are metal in the instructions. They are plastic in the box. I sent a message a few different times. I think one was a customer service email from their website. I think one was their Facebook account, and I think I found a different email. I'm not really sure. Um, of hey, can I get some metal landing gear legs for this one, please? Since it's so heavy, since it's included in the kit or in the instructions, and I paid for it. Um, Never heard anything back about it. Just went with the plastic ones. Um, to me, that's just a big foul. If you're going to charge this much money, support your customers. They're the people that are um, keeping you in business. So if you're going to do this, kind of do right by them. They didn't. Huge red flag to me. But anyways, like everything else, there's not really a good way to line any of this stuff up. Um, the holes that are bored in these landing gear pieces are too big. So when you put the that supporting leg in, it just kind of wobbles around. There's nothing to keep it vertical or anything, and that includes when you're putting the landing gear into the fuselage. They just kind of wobble around. You got to work to get them straight. So this is how I did it. I flipped it upside down and kind of sat them on a ruler, realizing this is a commission build and is going to be hung from the ceiling kind of as it's taking off. But I, in all good conscience, couldn't build it in a way that the landing gear wouldn't sit flat. Um, so that was at least a thing. Uh, and if I remember right, the way these bogies hang with the aircraft in flight, uh, they kind of hang so the back section lands hangs down, so that would touch first, and then the whole gear would rotate, and then the front would touch. Um, could be wrong about that, but I wanted it to be up to the customer. They've got the ability to have it sitting or hanging, so I didn't mess with any of that. So if you want to do it in flight, you'll have to tweak it some, but that's different argument. More priming and sanding along the way as I'm kind of working everything else. You can see the surface is getting a little bit smoother, and I'm using two different colors of primer so that I can contrast and, like I said earlier, find the high and the low spots and work to make it as flat as possible. When I, what I wanted to bring your attention to on this one was that nose wheel well. That's really just the wrong shape in total for this aircraft. It's pretty bulbous if you look at pictures of the actual thing to include the box art on the front. It's really shallow. It is there. It does stick out from the main fuselage, but it is not nearly that drastic, and it doesn't fill kind of the width that it does. And this is also another shape issue with the kit. The bottom of the fuselage is really, really round, and the molding in the actual aircraft, it's a lot flatter. So probably if they made that correction, it would have brought the sides of this nose wheel gear thing closer to the fuselage so it didn't stick out quite as much. Um, but that's kind of an issue with the shape. When you look at it from the side and the top, you can still see the nose wheel mount thing sticking out. And it comes a problem with the nose gear doors as well once you come to mounting those, which is, believe it or not, a problem on this one. There's no instructions on how to mount them. It comes as, if I remember right, it was one solid piece to do it closed. Um, there's engravings on the inside so that you have to cut it apart if you want to do them open. Um, and they kind of fold um, like a closet door where they would hinge in the middle and open out. But there's no way to mount them to each other or to the aircraft. So you're just finding some way of like putting a glob of super glue or putting whatever you use for your own makeshift hinge thing. Um, you just don't want to leave that to an afterthought once the aircraft is painted because that's gonna be a problem as well. I kind of wanted to highlight this picture. Um, it kind of maybe summarized a lot. Disappointed, but didn't even surprise me. Doing the tail, it's just a big flat piece. This wasn't even two halves; it was just a thing. And you prime it, and then you sand it, and you see all of the textures, the high spots and the low spots that you have to work with, even on such a simple piece. Um, I don't know what those diagonal supports are. I don't know if it was from the casting or whatever it is, sync marks, something. But even the stuff that looks like it's gonna be easy still finds a way um, to take up, a whole afternoon just priming and sanding and priming and sanding, just trying to get it smooth. Here's a little victory shot. Um, big, kind of big point here. Using spray, primer, and it was Tamiya AS7 is what I used. Ended up going through, I think it was 4 cans, um, trying to get this thing done. It does start to look like an airplane. It's starting to look pretty good. All the work that I put in is starting to pay off. Um, Put all the little antennas and lumps and bumps and stuff on. Once again, no instructions on where those go, so use your references. Um, and I would normally save those for after, but the holes are not the same shape as the pegs. So even those required sanding and filling once you put them in. So I put them in, sanded around them, filled around them, and then sprayed so that it would be relatively smooth. Because I was doing spray cans for the big picture of everything. I didn't want to worry about the wheel wells, and just because of the shape of them, it was easier to do after. Um, so as you can see, I just taped it off, airbrushed the inside of it white, and went from there. Next up was decals. From there, gloss the whole thing, put them on, and then was starting to work the semi-gloss over the top of this to secure them in. Another thing I was upset about, disappointment, whatever you want to call it, from the company when you buy the kit from their website's $338. When you're going to check out, there's a little box, and I don't remember what it says. I don't know if it's like upgraded decals or extra decals or whatever it is. You check the box, and then you just buy more, which is fine. I didn't really know what I was buying, but it cost $338. I figured why not have an extra set? I get them. I got my extra decals. It's another of the same set printed on like a different decal sheet. So I didn't get a good picture of it, so sorry about that. You're just gonna have to listen to me talk about it for a second. They are two very clearly different decal sheets. I don't know which is the good one, which is the extra one that I paid for, which was the original one that came with the kit. So I tested a little bit of both, and neither of them seemed particularly good. They went down relatively smooth, but like the adhesive on the back just didn't seem that great. So kind of where there was the letters, like you can see on the tail, the Dover, the AMC, and the flag, they went down well. Um, they were thin, but the adhesive on the back wasn't very good. So you did still get a little bit of silvering. So once they were on, I sliced them and I filled it with, I think I was using microset on it. Either that or Tamiya Super Strong. And that helps get rid of a lot of that silvering. But it's just another kind of confusing thing that just felt like very low effort on the manufacturer's side. Maybe I'm greedy, but yeah, it was rubbing me a little bit of the wrong way. Here's the landing gear doors going on. The main gear's door went on pretty well. Um, there's locating pins for those hinges there, so you get to put those on, and they're pretty sturdy once they're in. That's that nose gear that I was telling you about. Those doors don't have any kind of locating pins or anything. Um, the actual aircraft, they are very flat to the aircraft when they're open. And based on the shape of everything, you can't really do that. So I did the best that I could to kind of flatten them out and push them as close to the fuselage as I could when I glued them. And with that, I didn't have room to put any kind of supporting brace or anything. Um, so they're just kind of glued to each other and smushed against the edge of that nose wheel well. Probably could have come up with something better. Granted, I don't entirely know what that would have been. Um, I just did the best that I could with what I got. And I mean, it looked relatively convincing for what I was working with, so it's something. It looks like an airplane. Here we're kind of working on the smaller details. As you can see, decals are on there, and then just painting the rest of the windows black. There's a few kind of around the crew doors and all of that. Getting the clear parts on top, um, with just those red strobes and all that, working our way around. Uh, kind of finishing touches. So I got a few kind of around the horn pictures before the final assembly of everything. Continuing to work our way around. As I mentioned earlier, this is a commission, so this is going to be shipped. And in order for it to ship in a box that will actually be handled by USPS without it being freight, I had to take the tail off. So that one just kind of placed in. Thankfully, that one fit relatively well without too much hassle. So that was easy to assemble that and just kind of click on, click off. Here we got the main landing gear and the engines. Those are just taped on. Once again, those are going to be shipped separately. Um, so they never got glued on. Kind of even for our final demonstration, they're going to be taped on. So sorry about that. You might see a little bit of tape, but um, the wheels kind of went together pretty well. It's obviously a huge pain to paint 28 wheels, but it does look kind of good once it's done. And here it is. Here's our final assembly. Uh, it's a little bit of a tail sitter, not much, a little bit. So you have to put a little bit of nose weight in. Um, and the nose wheel didn't really fit in while I was just kind of like dry fitting everything together to get some pictures. So it's just kind of there in place. If all the wheels are there and secured, that might be enough to keep it from sitting on the tail, but that's why that cap's there. But here we go. Just kind of click through some pictures for you. Definitely too big for my little photo booth. So kitchen table was good enough. I still had all my Thanksgiving decorations up, so you get, pretty vibes with it too. All right, final wrap up of everything. I wanted to thank you for sticking it out this long. Hopefully, this kind of gives a little bit back to the community of just something that you can expect out of some of these high dollar kits. Um, there's not always a lot out there because they're not the mainstream Tamiya P51s that cost 20 bucks at your model shop. So if they suck, it's not that big a deal. But yeah, I wanted to put it out there. If you have to have one of these, it is the only one on the market. So you really don't get much choice. And in my little brain mind, maybe I'm just grumpy, but it feels like Anigrand knew that. Um, so it felt like they were putting something out so that they could say that there is one and they're the only guy in town to get one from, which felt like there was low effort in places where it would have been nice to have some more effort. Um, I put a lot of work into this thing. It's still not perfect. Um, didn't get any customer support when I reached out to them for pieces that were missing, mislabeled. The instructions, uh, that's kind of my biggest gripe. That to me, it looked like there was no heart. You kind of saw the instructions a couple times, and some of those other pictures. If I was manufacturing something like this, even if I didn't do a great job manufacturing it, if I was proud of it, I would make instructions that kind of showed you how to build it. Um, I feel like guesswork shouldn't be part of what you're paying for. Um, so I know that's kind of maybe that's more of a me thing than other people. Um, it just felt like the effort wasn't there. It ends up being good enough. I know the C-17 from them is incredibly inaccurate. So once again, the only 172 C-17 on the market, unless you feel like buying a vacuum form one. Um, and those are another project on their own. But yeah, the only reason that I could think is if you've got some kind of sentiment towards this, like a C-5 is what brought you out of Vietnam for the last time, or something like that. Or your air crew on one, or your family is air crew, and you need something uh, that's gonna be the one-off. As you can see, the shape ends up being there, but it's gonna take a lot of work to get there. Um, so yeah, I hope this wasn't too bad of me rambling, too negative. I don't like putting a lot of negative stuff out there. But for the cost, I really feel like you should know what you're expecting, know what you're getting into when it comes to building this thing. So ends up making you a C5. And hopefully you're happy with it. If you got any questions, feel free to reach out. I'll tag my Instagram, which I'm more active on. Um, you can comment on here, which I'll probably get to in 6 to 9 months or something. I don't post a lot of YouTube's on videos on YouTube. But anyways, thanks for sticking it out. Good luck if you build one, and let me see. Hopefully it works out for you if you build one. Good luck.